very warm welcome to our exchange today on seasonal work. And I think you all are very desperate to have some fresh fruit on your table, some strawberries, some asparagus, and we know that the season is beginning soon. And we have seen in the last pandemic how much we relate really and depend on a lot of workers coming to our country and making sure that we have this fruit and vegetables on our table. And yet when we enjoy the strawberry, it often has a bitter aftertaste. And this is because of really poor working conditions in this area of seasonal workers. And especially if we look at my country, in Germany, we have seen that a lot of these seasonal workers lack a good protection. They work without social insurance and with very, very pitiful health and accident coverage. I have said we have seen how much we rely on these workers, and it is due time to address what can be changed to make sure that these workers that do very hard work, and they are coming from many European countries or even sometimes third countries outside the EU, that they have good working conditions, that they have a good social protection, and that we can enjoy our fruit and our vegetable, and we know that this is the European way of how we are doing things. And this is why I'm very happy to discuss here together with Dragoș Pîslaru. I will ask him a little bit later to talk a bit about himself, but he is the chair of the Employment Committee. And he is coming from Romania with a lot of experience also in employment and social security issues. And he shares with me this passion that we want to make sure that every worker in Europe finds a good working environment, fair pay, good working conditions, and also social protection. And I will just give one example. If you work as a seasonal worker in Germany and you pick asparagus and you don't have any social protection and you do it 5 years in a row, you work almost, it's like a year without social protection. And imagine your pension at the end of your working life, and they would just deduct 1 year from your pension for the rest of your life. I think we all agree that would not be a very good idea. And this is why we are going to discuss what can be done on European level, but also how this is perceived in Romania and what are proposals and issues that we need to address. So Dragoș, a very warm welcome. And I think also our German viewers and in Europe are interested. What is your motivation, your background on addressing these issues?
Vielen Dank, liebe Gabi. Thank you so much for inviting me, and for those of you who do not know me, I am the chair of Employment and Social Affairs. Indeed, I am an economist by background, former Minister of Labor in Romania. I've been in the academic sector as well, also in the private sector. So indeed, I share this passion, and I see the importance of this particular topic. From where I am standing I see that mobility is really important at the European level. I mean, the free movement of labor, of persons, it's really quintessential. It's one of the important values that we have in Europe, and the pillars of the internal market. Now, this being said, obviously, it's important to understand that the cross-border and seasonal workers, generally speaking, they are not just enjoying their freedom, they are providing essential critical goods and services throughout the European Union. And I would say that the pandemic has shown us clearly the need for seasonal workers when everything was more or less, we had a travel ban, and we found the derogations for that particular travel ban in order to allow seasonal workers to come, because otherwise we would have lost completely the crops. This is just an example to understand that despite some nationalist speeches that seasonal or cross-border workers are taking the jobs of regular citizens, I mean, the pandemic has actually shown clearly that there were sectors that were completely blocked because there were no people that were willing to work. So that's also very important, and we had the recent proof of the critical role of the seasonal workers. Now, if we take the case of Romanian workers going to Germany, indeed I share completely the idea that beyond their freedom to travel, they need to be sure that they will enjoy the social protection that is derived also from the European Pillar of Social Rights, and of the simple fact that being as part of the European Union, they should enjoy both the rights and the obligations that the other EU citizens have. So, I mean, this was actually for me quintessential at the time of pandemics, and you remember, Gabi, that I succeeded to get the support of my group, and then we bundled together all the political groups to have a resolution on the European protection of cross-border and seasonal workers in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. And that particular resolution, had a clear alarm signal about the way in which the workers were treated. If we remember what happened in 2020, there were even workers, seasonal workers, that died because of COVID, and because the fact that we neglected the minimum working conditions needed in terms of social distancing and in the way in which the work conditions were there. And that was a very sad story at that time. And we, as representatives in the European Parliament, our first mandate is to see what is happening, to listen to the citizens, and to react when we have this kind of problem. So I see that the resolution was a very important step. And the resolution, because usually people are asking, okay, you have a resolution, so what? But the resolution triggered the guidelines from the European Commission explaining exactly how we should treat people in cross-border, and then of course,
maybe we explain to our viewers that these guidelines, the Commission underlined what rules and regulation we have that needs to be respected and is not respected quite oftenly, and underlined and tried to put pressure on the member states to respect these rules. But we also, in this resolution, addressed loopholes.
Exactly. Absolutely. I mean, clearly, we had the problem in understanding, for instance, just let me give an example. If you have a company that is hiring seasonal workers, but it's not hiring them directly, it's hiring them through other subcontractors, then in some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases, the company denies direct liability to the working conditions of those workers because they say that they are not my employees. They are the employees of a subcontractor. And we specifically mentioned that this kind of chains of subcontractors, I mean, cannot deny the liability of the company that is benefiting, after all, of the work of the seasonal workers. And we also mandated, the European Labour Authority that this House has fought quite valiantly to create in the last mandate. We mandated the European Labour Authority to intensify the cooperation within the labour inspections in different countries. I mean, be that in our case, Romania Labour Inspectorate with the German Labour Inspectorate, and to be sure that there's no abuse, that the contractual conditions are very clear in the language that can be read by those seasonal workers, that the coverage, that means health insurance and all the other things, are there clear, and they can benefit of these rights. And I think that we have managed to move on that. I know that ELA, European Labour Authority, has initiated a joint exercise of 6 countries exactly on agricultural seasonal workers, with the particular focus that they had on Italy, but not only there. And I think that we are moving the agenda slowly but steadily in the good direction.
Yeah. I would like to come in here because we are now in the 3rd year of the pandemic. We had this shock and this highlight on the problems, especially that many seasonal workers were getting infected because of the accommodation they were in, because of the transports to the fields, etc. You mentioned seasonal workers died, but we also have seen stories where they had tremendous bills to pay when they were hospitalized because many seasonal workers don't have a full health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say I was very proud and still am that in the German coalition agreement there is the obligation that we will cover health insurance fully for seasonal workers, because especially in a pandemic, this is essential, and every worker, I mean, this is one of the social model achievements that generations of people did work for, that every worker is also covered by a health insurance. And nevertheless, now it's March 2022, 3rd year of the pandemic, and we still don't have a health insurance coverage for them. And my fear is a little bit that we go into another season. We have a lot of promises, we have a lot of guidelines, but will the situation really change? So my question to you is, how is this perceived in the society, in media, in Romania? Mm-hmm. And what, as an EMPL chair, if you could just say, this is what we are going to do to prevent it, what would be your proposals?
I mean, clearly, the part that is protecting the rights and ensuring the safety and enforcing the existing legislation was also one of the pillars of the resolution that we put forward. And right now, we still are struggling, together with the member states, to be sure that the enforcement of the legislation is there. Now, the message. Let me just briefly explain how this is reflected in Romania. So in Romania, obviously, going to Germany or any other member state as a seasonal worker, it's not something that you do because you have a lot of opportunities back home. You do that because usually you like to, have a source of revenue that would be, as compared to the opportunities that you have by working in the agricultural sector in Romania, better. Now, given the fact that there are so many seasonal workers going, we are starting to have a labor shortage in Romania. So people are starting to think again, because they are starting to get good salaries also in Romania. We started to have modern farms with EU money, with the common agricultural policy and so on. But for those that are still choosing to go, I mean, what is important is that usually when talking to them, they are saying that indeed the conditions were not necessarily good, that they had no idea about the kind of protection that they had, there was no transparent translation of those things. So even though we cannot generalize, I will say that there are still loopholes, as you are mentioning. Now, as from the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, one of the things that it's important on one hand is to work with the European Labour Authority, because that's in our remit. I mean, this is an agency that needs to take into account the legislation that we put forward, and to, again, strengthen labor inspectorate and labor work, inspectorate work. And then on the other hand, it's about the report where you are leading the ground. It's about the social security systems coordination in Europe, the so-called 883 regulation, where we have, I mean, this is an old piece of legislation that we are right now struggling to update, as you know, and basically starting from the 70s, we started to define the rights that people that are traveling across Europe have. And the right for health insurance is one of those rights that we are having there. So on one hand, we are trying to right now to improve things, especially when it comes to unemployment benefits, to be sure that there are not going to be abuses and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, I mean, we are waiting for with a package that has a lot of other provisions that have already been agreed, because we can't agree on just a couple of things left. So this is a priority from the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, to be sure that we update the legislation on social security coordination, and hopefully that will, being a regulation, that will bring us the necessary enforcement that we need on these kind of provisions.
Yeah, because this is where we work already together since 2019.
Yes.
And what we really want to achieve is that in the conditions to be covered by social insurance, that we open it up so also that seasonal workers, especially the ones that come regularly, really, that really miss out so many rights that every worker otherwise has, that we make sure that also we cover this group better, to make sure that we will not have any worker in Europe that is working and has not the essential social rights, and this is social protection in terms of if you have accidents at work, if you get also if you're unemployed, but especially also health insurance, and to make sure that we don't enjoy our strawberries, our asparagus, on the fact that we have a system in agriculture that systematically exploits certain groups of workers, and these workers are people. There are people that have hope, that offer their labor in an area where we really need them. I mean, you said it in the pandemic. We realized that the fruits would rot on the farms. We have seen that if we don't have certain workers also that work in the supermarkets and stock the shelves, we would be really in serious problems. So what we are going to do, I think, also together, is to highlight the problems we still have in rich countries like Germany, but in many other European countries too, and to make sure that we have stronger tools in our hands than just guidelines. I think especially also if we look at the pay, when we talk to seasonal workers, what we realize is also, yes, every worker is entitled at least to minimum wages, but when you talk to seasonal workers, they experience that they get also cheated because working hours are not properly counted, and all of this. And my last question to you would be, you mentioned the ELA as a European agency that coordinates especially control missions and controls, and having the authorities of different member states here, control agencies working together. Do you think it is sufficient what we have in terms of controls here? What is the feedback you get in Romania from workers? And what would be your proposals how to address it to everyone else? We have very limited European competences here, unfortunately, but still we have some tools in our hands.
The purpose of creating the European Labour Authority was to ensure that there are people on a corridor coming from each labour inspectorate in each country, so that if I have a situation in one country and I just want to get hold of the labor inspectorate counterpart, there is not going to be an exchange of letters that takes weeks. Or I can, in this way, I can just go knock at the door, and my colleague from the other member state would be there to solve the problems that we are having. Very often, the problems that we can see with seasonal workers and cross-border workers are problems that they need, that have a degree of urgency. So if you discover that some people are, really getting sick There are some other fields, for instance, the situation of forestry in Austria, where you have a lot of people that are dying. If you look at the statistics, over a period of 5 years, a lot of people that died because of accidents, then you realize that you need to intervene. And of course, controls are one part of it. I mean, the sense that to be sure, after you have heard about some rumors or something like that, to go there control. But I think that it's a lot also about preemptive things. I mean, one of the important things is, for instance, to check the documents from now and then, and that would allow, for instance, to see if the provision related to the transparency and accessibility of contracts, the chain of subcontractors, or the other things are in order or not. And we can easily have a risk assessment here. You don't need to control the entrepreneurs, the companies that basically have everything in order. But I mean, in some sectors and in some cases where you receive, and it's very important to have this kind of disclosure and easiness of a call center where someone can report that, it's very important to have these preemptive controls as well. So the control part is very, very important. On the other hand, a lot of things that we can do is improve coordination in the sense of, to be sure that we are aligned in terms of the common understanding of what these solutions should be in helping seasonal workers. In some cases, it's just pure ignorance about the conditions. And ignorance is not an excuse. So it's very important to have adequate campaigns and information campaigns. And ELA's job is as well to try to promote that and be sure that the seasonal workers know their rights. I mean, they have rights, and they should know their rights, and we need to work together, European, national level, so that they have this awareness about what they can ask and what they are entitled to. So on one hand, indeed, member states need to provide the rights, and the companies need to provide the rights, but the workers themselves need to be aware that we at the European level, we are supporting them with things coming from resolution guidelines and hard legislation. But they should know that the status of EU citizens is giving them the kind of rights for social protection, adequate and fair social protection.
That is very important, and also in many member states, also in Germany, we have independent offices where if they have a problem they can address to, they get support in their native languages to make sure not only to know their rights, but also someone that helps you to enforce your rights and is on your side. I think this is also important, and this is the reasons why some of the scandals became public and were addressed, and you have to name things when you want to change them. And this is what we were doing here together, and we are doing it because we are convinced that the European labor market is a great achievement, but it needs fair rules. And one of the advantages for every European citizen is you can work in any country and no one has the right to discriminate you here. And this is what we are fighting for together. And in the end, we hope that very soon also you will enjoy strawberries or asparagus where you know you are not enjoying it because some people got heavily or brutally exploited, but also with fair working conditions. And I think it's worth 20 more cents maybe per kilo to do that. And in this sense, I thank you very much. We continue our fight here. It's still a long way, but I think the pandemic helped us to address it and to make sure that also seasonal workers will have social protection, health protection, and good working conditions for the hard work they are doing. Thank you very much, Dragoș.
Thank you so much for having me. I need to say that your example with offices that are helping with that, it's really important. Fair Mobilität in Germany is one of these associations that we broadly consulted also for the documents that we elaborate here in the Parliament, but there are many others and trade unions as well. So very, very important point. And I thank you again for having me and looking forward to working together for fair mobility in Europe.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for naming the trade unions. Indeed, they are the organizations that always had the seasonal workers in mind and are also pushing very much for fair working conditions. Thank you very much. So thank